أنا دكتور خالد وليد، ربان سفينة النجاة إلى شواطئ بكة القدس. مرحبا بكم في ميثاق الخالق، منصة حديثة لاستكشاف حقائق الإيمان الخالدة. نعتمد على القرآن كمصدر وحيد، وندرس النصوص المقدسة والتاريخ والعلم لكشف غاية البشر وعلاقتنا بالخالق ومصيرنا بعد الحياة.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
The place where we really try to go beyond just summarizing sources.
Exactly. We want to hand you the actual tools, the intellectual gold nuggets, so you can really get a handle on some of the most complex concepts out there.
And do it instantly. That's the goal, at least.
Today, we are definitely diving deep.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading into a space where philosophy, linguistics, and theology all meet.
And it's a journey that really gets to the heart of some massive questions about, well, free will and destiny.
For centuries, scholars have been wrestling with this duality between resolve and decision.
Right, and we're going to be focusing on two specific terms that are just, absolutely central to the architecture of action, both on a divine and a human level.
Those terms are irada and mashia.
Irada and mashia. They might sound similar, but the distinction is everything.
Right, and our mission today is to unpack a really revolutionary framework that separates these two concepts with just an incredible level of precision.
We can roughly translate them for now. Irada as resolve or will.
And mashia as decision, intent, or even command.
The confusion between these two has, I think, really clouded spiritual understanding for a long, long time.
It has. It leads people to mix up God's thought process with God's actual actions, or, our own human planning with our ability to execute that plan.
And the source material we're looking at is very sharp on this. It doesn't just blame, say, translation errors.
No.
It actually attributes the confusion to, and I'm quoting here, the influence of the magic of the children of Israel and the Bedouins who corrupt the words after their places.
So the implication there is that there's been this long history of cultural and maybe even political pressure that has deliberately blurred these lines.
Yes, the line between internal spiritual thought and external material command. And that blurring creates a really distorted view of how cause and effect actually work.
And the analysis we're about to explore, it just promises to cut right through all of that distortion. The sources even call it achieving a new aesthetic area of knowledge.
It's a bold claim.
It is. And look, before we go any further, we have to be absolutely crystal clear about something.
Yes, this is crucial.
This entire framework, everything we're about to unpack.
The whole distinction between irada and mashia.
It's all based on the new discoveries of a specific researcher, Dr. Khaled Waleed.
That's right. He's the owner of the YouTube channel Almighty Covenant, or Uset in Arabic. His research is really the map that we're using today.
And that map, that framework, is incredibly ambitious.
It is. It offers a clear mechanism for understanding not just the creator's actions, but also how human choice actually operates within these, universal laws.
So if you've ever felt that destiny and free will seem to contradict each other,
this analysis might just provide the missing structural link you've been looking for.
It promises a functional map moving from a pure idea all the way to its final execution.
A flow of intent.
Exactly. So let's get into the structure.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's get to the core of this discovery, moving beyond just simple synonyms and into what the source calls a kind of spiritual architecture.
Right. This is the first major intellectual tool that Dr. Khaled Waleed's framework gives us.
Establishing this new duality, irada versus mashia.
And the key is understanding where these actions are born. It's that concept of spiritual geography.
So these aren't just interchangeable words.
Not at all. The source material insists they are distinct sequential functions. They happen in a specific order, and they each have a designated spiritual center.
One in the head, one in the chest.
Precisely.
Okay, let's start at the top with the intellectual component, irada, resolve or will.
This is the upstream part of the whole process. It's the spiritual, the intellectual, the thought-based component.
And its location.
It is fundamentally connected to the spirit, and it is located in the head.
So think of irada as the concept.
The concept, exactly. The high-level plan, the raw energy of a desire or a resolve. It's the domain of pure potential.
Like an architect's blueprint.
Perfect analogy. It's the blueprint being designed and perfected in the mind before any resources are actually committed. It's the energy of an intention, fully formed.
It's the what is and the why. It makes perfect sense. Now let's contrast that with the second term, mashia.
Decision, intent, command.
Right. So if irada is the concept in the head, what is Mashiach?
Mashiach is the downstream part. It's the practical, the execution component. It's the commanding, action-based order.
And its location is the chest heart.
Correct. It's connected to the self, or soul.
Yeah.
So if irada is the architect's blueprint.
Then Mashiach is the CEO signing the order to start construction.
Exactly. It's the foreman shouting to the crew, let's go! It's the moment of conversion. You're turning that potential energy into material reality.
So to use a more modern analogy, irada is like a software engineer designing the perfect algorithm. It's all logic, purpose, planning. It's all happening in the head. And then Mashiach is the compiler, the execution engine, down in the chest, that takes that perfect logic and turns it into physical action on the screen.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the process always flows in that fixed hierarchy. The spirit, the row, forms the intellectual, willful ideas, the irada.
And only then
Does the self, the nafs, issue the commanding order of the intent, the Mashiach. The spiritual idea has to come first. It's the necessary basis for any practical command.
This distinction brings so much clarity to the linguistic subtleties in the sacred text.
It really does.
For example, if I say to someone, I will this project to succeed, what am I actually saying in this framework? Urid. You're communicating thought, potential, spiritual energy. You're engaging your irada.
So it's internal.
It's all internal. You're thinking about it, you're designing the strategy in your head, channeling your resolve. But if you say, I command this to happen, Asha.
Then something has shifted. A massive shift. You've moved the idea from the realm of energy in the head to the realm of physical conversion in the chest. You've now practically ordered it. It's either an immediate reality or an imminent action.
The moment of commitment changes the energy from potential to kinetic.
That's it. And this whole hierarchy, this flow, is validated when we look at the sources analysis of the spirit, the Ruh itself.
The famous verse.
The one that's been pondered for centuries. They ask you concerning the spirit, say, the spirit is from the command of my Lord.
Okay, wait a minute. That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
It is.
If the spirit, the Ruh, is the source of our irada, our will.
Yes.
But the text says the Ruh itself comes from the command, the Amr.
Yeah.
And you just said command is the domain of Mashiach.
Mm-hmm.
Then doesn't that mean irada is actually subordinate to Mashiach?
It does. And this is a monumental insight from the research of Dr. Khaled Waleed. It completely reframes the relationship.
So they're not co-equal partners in a duality.
No. Irada is functionally a subset of Mashiach. Our whole system of intellectual will and planning is actually created from the command system of the self.
That puts a serious limit on how we think about will. We tend to imagine our will, our irada, as the ultimate decision maker, the thing in charge.
Right, the captain of the ship.
But this framework suggests our will is just a component, an important one, but still just a component operating within the much larger comprehensive structure of the nafs, the self, the Mashiach.
Precisely. The power to execute, the final decisive element, that's the nafs. It holds the ultimate command. The willful idea, the irada, is formed by the spirit, the Ruh, but it has to be passed down into the management system of the self to become a real commanding order.
The fully realized intent, the Mashiach.
Yes. This gives a real structure to our spiritual life. Our thoughts, our plans, they have to ultimately submit to the system of action to become real.
So even at the divine level, the plan, the irada, is housed within and executed by the command system, the Mashiach.
It's the difference between the thought of existence and the final world-creating decree of be.
That provides an incredible structural insight into the nature of causality itself.
It does. It's a game changer.
So let's take that structure now and apply it to the divine realm.
The divine application of irada and Mashiach. This is where the framework offers extraordinary clarity on things like God's justice and the actual mechanism of divine action.
And it all comes back to that distinction between knowledge and action.
Right. In the source material, irada is defined as a thought interaction that's based on knowledge. This is like a comprehensive awareness.
A holistic understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas Mashiach is the practical command, and it's based on science or foreknowledge. Theo. This is more like executable data. One is about understanding the why, the other is about the measurable, governed how.
You can really see this separation when the source analyzes divine action. It references the verse, doer of what he wills.
So Sirjidoni say in understanding what magan you say Masha were an old protector and dissolved his discern, sholar specimet. Hmm. And according to this framework, that verse is specifically connecting actions, afal, to the irada, the spiritual, the intellectual, the head.
So what this establishes is that God's actions are never just arbitrary whims.
Never. They are meticulously pre-planned managerial intents that are born from that divine irada.
So it's not simply God does whatever he wants in a chaotic sense.
No, it's more like God executes the perfect pre-planned concept that he wills. The creation of the entire cosmos, or something like the design of paradise. These aren't spontaneous acts.
They're managed processes.
Managed processes that originate from that perfected divine will.
And this brings us to a really fascinating point about justice.
This might be the most profound theological implication discovered by Dr. Khaled Waleed. It addresses that eternal question. How can a just creator allow oppression to exist?
And the answer is locked inside the specific word choice.
It is. The verse is, and God does not will oppression for the worlds. Ediso iukuma ieskurikosi uto in the
The key word there is yurid wills, from irada.
The significance of that term cannot be overstated. If the verse had said, God does not command oppression, using a word from the Mashia family,
Then you could argue that he might permit it or allow it, even if he doesn't directly endorse it.
exactly. But by using yurid from irada, the source material confirms something much deeper.
What does it confirm?
It confirms that oppression cannot even exist within God's spiritual, intellectual planning sphere, his irada. The very concept of oppression, the willful thought, the prior planning for injustice. It's impossible for the creator to even possess.
Wow.
It's a fundamental statement about the purity of the divine thought process. Oppression is absent not just from his final command, the Mashia, but from the originating blueprint, the irada.
That is a staggering implication. It's like an intellectual barrier. If the divine irada is pure thought and perfect planning, then injustice, which is fundamentally chaotic and corrupting.
It can't originate there.
It has to originate somewhere else.
Usually in the corrupt irada of the human being.
Right. And this purity is then reflected in the divine plan for humanity, which is a plan for ease, not hardship.
Precisely. The source references this verse. God wills to lighten your burden, for humanity was created weak.
Big man, edidai sign etiochi, again, you read from irada.
Yes. The divine irada, the intellectual plan, already takes into account our structural weaknesses. It designs systems, like religious dispensations, specifically to relieve us.
So it's a form of compassionate managerial intent based on deep foreknowledge of our nature.
And now we can shift from that planning stage, the irada, to the execution stage, the mashia.
The moment of action.
And the most concise, the most powerful example of divine mashia is the command of creation itself.
Yesam be shadika, be, and it is.
That is the immediate, non-negotiable act of intent.
This moment of be is the command system, the mashia kicking in. It's the instantaneous conversion of the intellectual plan into physical, material reality.
And Dr. Waleed's analysis provides a conceptual bridge here. It connects irada with wisdom.
The perfection of the plan.
And it connects mashia with rulings or judgment.
The decisive execution.
So the command, the mashia, is the governing judgment that instantly executes the preceding intellectual irada, the wisdom. The ultimate decision is reached by the self, the nafs, and executed as a command. But it's built upon the wisdom generated by the spirit, the root.
This structure is just incredibly robust. It shows this systematic flow of divine action. First, the perfect wisdom plans it. Then, the ultimate judgment executes it. It creates a hierarchy of attributes.
And we can see that flow mirrored in other divine attributes, like compassion and mercy.
How so?
Well, Al-Rahman, the compassionate, is often described as the generator of everything. The source material links this generating function to irada, that fundamental, spiritual, energetic thought.
The source code of creation.
In a way, yes. Whereas Al-Ram, the merciful, is the manager of everything, the one who governs and applies the rules.
Which fits perfectly with Mashia, the mechanism of execution, governance, and management.
And the practical implication of all this, which sort of brings this section to a close, is how we should approach the Creator.
It changes our relationship.
It does. We worship Nabud, the divine spiritual will, the irada. We acknowledge the perfect wisdom and thought that generated all existence. But we seek assistance, Nastan, from the divine commanding intent, the Mashia. That's the active managerial force that executes and governs our reality. It provides the structure we live in.
So we appeal to the manager to lighten our burdens.
Based on the plan that was already established by the compassionate generator?
That sets a perfect foundation for understanding our own responsibility.
It does.
So, Section 3. This brings the whole duality right back home to us.
Sure.
The human implication. Path versus choice.
Right. If the creator uses errata for planning and mashia for commanding the universe, how do we use our own, equivalent systems?
Especially when our internal plan, our errata, might be corrupt.
This is where we have to examine the destructive human will. The source material focuses on what it calls the evil person, or those who actively seek corruption through their own intellectual planning.
The verse it uses is really striking, but rather, man wills to commit evil before him.
The ser shaya suroji anaisucha.
In the context of errata, this isn't just passive malice or a moment of weakness.
No, this is active, high-level planning for corruption. It's intellectual evil.
So they use their spiritual errata, their thought system, to constantly plot and scheme.
Constantly. Plotting how to control their future, how to oppress others, how to evade the consequences of their actions. The term Liftyaru Amama suggests a kind of strategic planning to manipulate the entire path that lies ahead of them.
They're so consumed by this wicked errata that they even try to speed up their own acquisition of foreknowledge.
Yes, trying to figure out the day of judgment, thinking that if they can know the end, they can outsmart it and continue their oppressive planning indefinitely.
So a wicked person's errata is devoted entirely to designing a world where their corrupt mashia, their commands, their actions, will always be successful. They're trying to circumvent divine law.
Exactly. And this inability to change the fundamental foundation of one's errata is perfectly encapsulated in the story of Pharaoh.
His entire life was the manifestation of a wicked errata.
It was. Intellectual arrogance, oppressive rule. The plan was rotten from the very start.
So what happens when that whole system collapses? When he's drowning, he tries one last desperate maneuver.
He tries to execute a final good command. He declares his faith. He claims an alleged mashia of submission.
A command to believe.
That's the key distinction. He executed a mashia of belief in that final moment. He issued the command. But the reply was swift. Now, while you had disobeyed before and were among the corruptors.
So it was rejected.
Completely. The source material classifies this deathbed repentance as a claimed will-intent mashia of belief. But it failed.
Why did it fail?
Because his life's errata, the entire foundation of his spiritual planning, his thought, his resolve, was entirely corrupt and already complete.
It's like he tried to execute a new program, a new mashia, without ever installing the necessary spiritual operating system, the errata.
That's a fantastic way to put it. The divine judgment wasn't based on that last-second command. It was based on the lifetime of corrupted errata that dictated all his previous actions.
You can't change your destination by just flooring the accelerator in the last second if the map you've been using for decades was fundamentally flawed.
And this clarity, this insight into the function of why that kind of repentance is rejected, is a powerful theological contribution from Dr. Khaled Waleed's framework.
And it leads us directly to the second core discovery about human freedom.
This one really addresses that age-old tension between destiny and choice.
And the source material puts it very bluntly. Humans are guided set on a course, Musa Yarun, before they're given choice.
That is the critical separation. Our entire existence is defined by two linked pairs that respect the hierarchy we've already established.
Let's break those down.
First, the course or path, Masira, is linked to Mashia. This is the fixed, practical command set by God.
So things like the laws of physics, the structure of time, the environment we're born into.
All of that, that's the path. And then second, choice, Pia, is linked to Errata. This is the willful thought, the moral direction, the spiritual energy we get to activate within that set path.
Okay, so divine Mashia sets the rules of the universe. The speed limit, the force of gravity, the economic realities of a specific time and place, that's the path, and we are guided within it.
We are Musiarin.
Right. But divine errata grants us the capacity to choose our moral and intellectual response, our choice, within those constraints.
We are Mukayarun. Think of it like a massive river. The Mashia is the river itself. Its banks, its current, its direction. You can't change the river.
No.
You, the human, are a boat that's been set upon that river. You are Musariun guided, set on a course. But you have a rudder.
The rudder is my errata.
The rudder is your errata, and it represents your choice. You can choose whether to steer toward the beautiful shore or toward the dangerous rapids, or just to drift aimlessly. The river is the constant, but your internal direction is the variable.
That makes the Mashia, the path, the element of divine scientific foreknowledge, the ilm.
And the irada, the choice, is the element of our human spiritual response, our marifa.
And because this structure is a reality, the framework outlines a specific, let's call it an etiquette of action.
Exactly. Especially when we plan for the future, we are commanded to acknowledge this subservience.
From the verse in the Quran, and never say of anything, indeed I will do that tomorrow, except by adding, if God wills.
Inshallah.
Now, most people just see that as, being pious or having good manners.
But according to this deep analysis, it's a structural mandate. It's a recognition of reality.
What does it mean structurally?
It means we are actually prohibited from activating our personal intellectual planning system, our irada, our thought about an action for tomorrow, unless we explicitly acknowledge that our ability to command the execution of that thought,
our personal mashia,
is entirely contingent on and subservient to God's ultimate mashia, the path, the command.
So I'm acknowledging that my thought process, my irada, might be perfect, but the actual execution tomorrow is not mine to guarantee.
Because you only operate within the divine mashia that sets the course.
My rudder only works if the river is still flowing.
Absolutely. The source material emphasizes this profound truth. God established the scientific, practical, commanding mashia, the course before creation. We, therefore, use our individual irada and our subsequent personal mashia,
our command to our thoughts,
within that immense preset divine course. The knowledge provided by Dr. Khaled Waleed is that we are structurally steered before we are allowed choice. And this shifts planning from being an act of control to being an act of submission.
Let's ground this structural insight now by looking at a couple of very detailed, linguistically specific interactions from the sacred texts.
This is section 4, where we can see human and divine command interacting in the real world.
And we're going to focus on the active verbs being used. Fa'ala, which means doing, and is linked to irada and thought.
And amara, which means commanding and is linked to mashia and the self.
Let's start with the ultimate moment of submission. The conversation between Ibrahim and his son Ismail.
Right. Ismail has just been told he's to be sacrificed, and he responds to his father, "O my father, do what you are commanded. You will find me, if God wills, of the patient."
So many layers in that one sentence.
The linguistic breakdown here is critical. Ismail told his father to do afal,
which comes from fa'ala.
Exactly.
Huh?
And doing requires engaging the irada, the willful spiritual thought process. He wasn't asking his father for a robotic act of obedience.
No, he was asking him to process the divine command intellectually, to internalize it, and then to execute it deliberately from a position of full conscious acceptance.
But then, crucially, he links the final outcome, his own patience, to God's mashia. Inshallah, if God wills.
That is profound. He's demanding that Ibrahim's execution be an act of conscious will, of a righteous irada, while also confirming his own total submission to the overarching divine command, the mashia.
It's a perfect alignment. Now contrast that profound submission with the incredibly complex, coercive interaction between the wife of Al-Aziz, Zuleika, and Joseph.
This is a masterclass in psychological manipulation, and it all hinges on the linguistic separation between irada and mashia.
She's trying to force Joseph into sin, and her threat to the other women is so carefully worded. She says, if he does not do what I command him, he will be imprisoned.
Right. So her statement translates to, if he does not do, following to irada thought, what I command, Amr linked to Mashia self, he will be imprisoned.
The analysis from Dr. Khaled Waleed points out she used yafal, the think, not a word like yamal, work obey blindly. Why is that subtle choice so important? That is the crucial detail. Her command, her personal mashia, was the consequence, imprisonment.
That was the action she was ready to take.
But the condition for that action was Joseph's internal choice. Would he yafal? Would he engage his spiritual, intellectual system, his irada, and choose to act on her request?
She wasn't just seeking mere obedience. A word like yamal would imply that, like a weak slave just fulfilling an order.
She wanted more. She wanted him to use his powerful, righteous irada to willfully choose her sin.
So she was attacking his will, not just his body.
Exactly. She presented him with a choice that required deep moral deliberation, an act of irada. Herself, her nafs, was ready to execute the command, the mashia of imprisonment, but only if his spirit, his ruh, refused to yield to her intellectual temptation.
And the source analysis emphasizes that she actually, in a way, respected him.
It does. It says she respected the fact that Joseph was a man who thinks within the boundaries of God before taking any self-imposed commands. She wanted his will, his resolve, to submit to hers. That would satisfy her pride and her desire for control over someone so spiritually powerful.
But Joseph's irada was tethered to the divine. He rejected her corrupt plan. And therefore, her subsequent Mashiach, the imprisonment, became an outcome of his righteousness, not his failure to comply.
He chose the path of greater spiritual integrity within the path that was set by his ruler's wife.
These two examples, Ishmael submitting his irada to the divine Mashiach, and Joseph resisting Zuleika's command for a corrupted irada, they just perfectly illustrate this functional split.
They really do.
This entire framework, developed by Dr. Khaled Waleed, it really provides a complete map for intentionality. Let's just quickly recap the four foundational pairs that define this essential difference.
Okay, let's ground them one last time. First, functionally. Irada is thought.
And Mashiach is command.
Second, regarding energy. Irada is spiritual energy. That's a potential.
While Mashiach is material action.
Wow.
That's the manifest reality.
Third, the foundation of the decision. Irada is knowledge-based interaction. It's seeking that comprehensive awareness.
And Mashiach is the science for knowledge-based practical command. Wayan, the executed data set.
And finally, the movement of manifestation. Irada is associated with Ato, the spiritual arrival of the idea.
And Mashiach is associated with Jah, the physical arrival, the execution.
This deep dive has, I think, really allowed us to explore the source analysis, which offers such a structured, detailed, and focused understanding of these fundamental principles.
The principles of both divine and human resolve.
And just to reiterate the foundation of all of this detailed knowledge, this new aesthetic area of clarity, it's all derived from the pioneering research of Dr. Khaled Waleed from his channel, Almighty Covenant.
The big picture connection really brings us full circle, back to the beginning. The hierarchy.
All human potential stems from the Creator's system of spirit, the Ruh, which is Irada, and self, the Nafs, which is Mashiach.
And because Irada is a subset of Mashiach, every human action and command has to trace its root back to the divine command.
It does. As confirmed in the source texts, we cannot will or execute, except as God wills or commands. This confirms that the Creator is simultaneously the one, Ahad, in his comprehensive spiritual will, his irada.
And the self-sufficient Samad in his perfect governing intent, his Mashiach.
We are created from him, and the mechanism of our return to him is set by this very duality.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, in your pursuit of knowledge and intentional action?
Well, it means you are constantly operating within the divine Mashiach, the set path, the universal laws, the boundaries of reality. Your life is defined by that fixed course.
But within that course?
Within that course, you are using your irada, your choice, your thought, your spiritual planning, to determine your moral and practical direction.
It demands an intellectual and ethical engagement with the path you're on.
It does. Responsibility is placed squarely on our irada, on our plan, to ensure it aligns with the divine irada, which we know is pure and cannot possibly contain oppression.
Thank you so much for sharing your sources and letting us dive so deep into this crucial distinction. We really hope this functional map of irada and Mashiach helps you navigate the complexity of your own intentionality and human freedom.
And our final provocative thought for you to consider is this. Given that this framework establishes that our personal Mashiach, or practical command for tomorrow, is fundamentally dependent on the divine Mashiach,
The set path.
the real spiritual challenge isn't merely praying for success. The challenge lies in ensuring that our irada, our pre-planned internal thought, is so meticulously pure and so aligned with divine wisdom that we deserve for the command to execute it.
So the question becomes, how does the quality of your internal planning right now define the potential for your future actions?
Think about that profound connection between your head and your heart.
Until the next time we dive.
يا ابن الوليد صوت التاريخ يناديك والسيف يعرف يده
يا ابن الوليد أم سيف تقرد أم من دم التاريخ تشحذ فيستعر
فإن القوم والله سيوفهم صدئت أحلى والزيف حتى صار منتشر. أنت قبس قبس من نور يشق الظلام ولا ينكسر. أنت صوت حق في زمان أصم، ومن مع الله لا يقهر.
أنت قبس قبس من نور، والسيف عند نورك ينبحر.
يا خالد لا تأبه لمن أعماه كبره، فالنور لا يستأذن العميان إن ظهروا. قد ألقى الرحمن فيك نعمة ورحمة لتشق